4D Ladybug with Opening Wings Acrylic Nailer Tutorial by Hotpinkzebrapolish. Hi everyone, in today's video I'm going to be doing a recreation, sort of one of TonysNails designs, and so this is going to be his ladybug with the opening wings. So when you pull on the little handle on the bottom, the wings slide open, and then if you push it up, they slide back closed. And so this, like I said, is my take on it. It's not exactly like his. I made a few tweaks, a few changes. If you'd like to recreate it like his was, it's fine with me, doesn't matter. But if you do a recreation, please tag him, because I do like to give credit where credit is due, and especially with an inventive design like this, it really is his idea, and so please tag him and give him the credit. And don't forget to click subscribe to see my future videos as well. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little piece of a straw and I'm going to cut it to the length that I want the wings to be plus a little, so you'll see eventually. So it's about 2/3 of the nail. So I'm going to cut that, and then I'm going to cut down the center of it like that, down the center of the straw, and then cut another little chunk out of it so that you have more of a bridge instead of a circle, just like that. I'm going to fit that on there and see how it sets, and see if it feels good and how much it bends so that it doesn't really have many gaps. And if it needs to, I thought it needed a little more flexibility, so I'm just going to cut off a little bit more of the straw. And as you can see, there is still that bridge quality. And then I'm going to fit it on there again, see how that works. Now, I have no idea if this is how Tony did it. I'm really quickly going to glue on that straw. I don't know if this is how he did it. I don't know if this is anywhere close to what he did. This is how I figured out to do something similar to what he did. And so you can take this with a grain of salt, but I don't know for sure if this is how he did it. And this tutorial in general is going to be a lot slower and not nearly as sped up as many of mine are, because there are so many weird little steps in here that are crucial to the process that I want to make sure that I can discuss each of them along the way. So currently I'm just gluing that straw into place and holding it, hopefully not gluing myself to the nail in the process. And there we go. So now I'm going to be adding a layer of black acrylic over this nail. So this is where it starts getting a little hinky. I know, it starts getting hinky right off the bat. Over the straw, you want it to have a little bit thicker of acrylic than above the straw. So over and down in that whole section, so 2/3 of the bottom, or not 2/3 of the bottom, but 2/3 of the nail on the bottom. That's better. You want to have a little more thickness and be smoothed over so that you can't see a definite lump where the straw is, if that makes sense. So just make sure that you sort of flatten out that area as best as you can with the black acrylic. But then once you start working above the straw, which I will do in just a second here, you want that to be as thin as you possibly can get it. You can smooth it out a little at the edges, but right where that straw is, you want it to be paper thin. And if you wanted to, you could do this with gel polish instead of with the acrylic, just to make sure that it's thin. You want to be opaque, so you don't want to have any, depending on your black, if your black doesn't have much for pigmentation and you can still see through it, that might not be so good. But you want to make sure that there's still a lot of space at that opening of the straw. And don't block your straw, don't plug that wouldn't be good. So now I'm going to take and I'm going to be filing this nail very carefully, especially over the bottom of it. You don't want to file through it, through the straw. Depending on how much acrylic is there, you might not have to worry about filing through the straw or into the straw, but just, you don't really want to do that. You don't want to damage that straw, you want to leave it intact. So now I'm going to take 2 more nail tips that are the same size as that first one that I used, and I'm just going to set one over the top of the nail so that the cuticle is at the cuticle and the tip is at the tip. And I'm going to draw a line a little bit above the top of the straw. So this is going to be the length of the nail, or the length of the wings. The wing should be longer than the straw was in the beginning. So just draw a line, because you can see through the clear tip, and then trace down the sides of the nail, and then a little bit in, add another line going straight down. So I wish I could, okay. So if you look at the tip of the nail, since this is a coffin shape, draw straight up from the tip, and then at the other side, draw from the edge of the nail to an angle. So the one line should go in and should be cut in a little ways. So then I'm just going to repeat the process on the same side except for opposite. So I'm going to set that on there, and because the ends of the bottom of there are the same as the tip of the nail, so the side that went straight up, I'm going to angle that to the edge of the nail, and the side that went that angled below, I'm going to draw a line straight down. Does that make any sense? I hope it does. If not, you can hopefully see what I'm doing and catch the drift anyway. Then you're going to also want to plan out 2 dots for where you're going to have your the holes in this part later on. So one of them should be an angle, so you want to go from the inner corner down a ways at an angle, and then the one on the outer corner of each wing should just be a dot. So now I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to be cutting it. And as this progresses, hopefully you'll see the reason why these are all the shapes that I need, and then it'll make sense, and hopefully. So the width at the tip of the wings is the same as the width at the nail, but the width at the top of the wings is a little bit shallower or shorter or thinner than the width of the nail at that point on the actual nail. So these wings don't taper as much as the coffin shape of the nail did. Oh boy, I hope that makes sense. So then if you layer them up with the tips together and you spread out the top of them a little bit, it should fill in. So set the one nail up so the nail that goes, or the wing that goes on the left, that edge is the same. The left edge matches the left edge, and on the right edge matches the right edge. So just hold those together for a second, and the nail should not go all the way across. Each of the wings should not cover up the nail from side to side. There should be a gap. Oh boy. So now I'm going to be taking my e-file and I'm going to be filing out those holes that I left before. So the one that's going to be towards the center or in the center of the nail later on, so the one that's at the angle, you want that to be a little bit bigger. And if it seems to be extra large, that's okay. So you just want to make sure that that one has a little bit of wiggle room in it. You don't want it to be super snug. And so just file that out with an e-file. Just like so. So it's at a nice angle and there's plenty of space. The one that's on the corner, that's going to be on the outside of the nail, you want that one to be a little bit more snug and a little tighter. So just barely go through that, and if you need to, you can poke out the rest of that plastic with either like a pointy tweezers or with a safety pin or with your wire later on. So I'm going to repeat the process for the other nail. So creating the hole that's going to be towards the center of the nail. Once you are finished and putting it together, make that one larger and more spacious, and the one that's going to be on the outside a little smaller. So the two wings are parallel, or no, they're opposite of each other. So I'm just going to buff off the rest of that Sharpie that's on the nail just to get rid of it so it doesn't interfere with the design. And so you can just do that quickly with a buffer. It should not take too much to get rid of it. Just like so, and then I'm going to take a hand file that's 180 grit, and I'm going to just smooth out and sharpen up the edges of the wings just so that they don't look so rough, because when you cut the nail tips, they seem to get a little, I don't know, they're never really smooth. So if you just file them, they're going to crisp up and look a lot better. Almost lost my voice there for a second. So I'm going to file it. So just like I said, repeat the steps for each one. So then I just temporarily attach them to my brush cover with some poster putty just so they could hold there in place while I'm painting them with some red glittery gel polish. And I'm using only one coat of gel. I want to keep these as thin as I can. So this is just one coat of a gel polish that will not need a top coat. And that's part of the key too, because if you have to add a top coat, then that's going to add thickness. So if you just do either a one-step gel or any gel that doesn't have a tacky layer, then you're going to be good to go and you won't have to worry about it then. So now I'm going to be adding the black spots. And I know that eventually I'm going to be adding a layer of gel sealer, and I said you don't want to add a top coat. But if your gel was tacky after that first stage, you would have to apply a top coat before the acrylic paint. And so that's going to add 3 layers of gel instead of just 2. If you don't remove the tacky layer before adding the acrylic paint, you're going to see that the acrylic paint is going to wear off really quick. And because we are going to be, these nails are going to be rubbing, the wings are going to rub against each other, you'd see that that acrylic paint would pretty much flake off really fast. So then I'm going to be applying a layer of just some gel sealer or gel top coat over these 2 nail tips and curing them once again. So now on the Ladybug's body that we created before, I'm going to take 2 pieces of a very, very fine wire and cut them so that they have some extra length, and they're the same length, but you want to make sure that they're long enough that you have some extra space to work with. And I'm going to string them up through that straw that we glued on the nail in the beginning. And then I'm going to, at the top of it where it comes out, I'm going to bend those up so that they have a nice right angle, and then I'm going to start twisting them. And so the reason that I'm using 2 finer pieces of wire instead of a larger one is because this twisting motion is going to really add some strength and keep them from bending. And it's going to make them a lot stronger than one piece of wire that's a little bit bigger, just because they have that interwoven, it's just going to work a little bit better, and they're going to have a less chance of unfolding. And so I'm going to also twist them at the bottom just like that. Plus, it's really nice and smooth on the inside of the nail, and it's a little flatter so that it slides a little easier, I find. So I'm going to be trimming off the excess wire at the top, and then I'm just going to slide my wings on there so that they are in the right spot. And I'm sorry once again that I'm off camera. So just put the wings on that first string and then hold them in place so that that outer hole is right at the edge of the nail, and the tips of the nail just come and they match the tips of the wings match the tip of the ladybug's body, like that. So then taking a little piece of a thicker wire that fits in the holes, I'm going to dip an end of that into some acrylic paint, just like that, and then I'm going to put that through the hole. This is going to mark on the nail where I need to make the posts that are going to go through those holes later on. So this is just a marker. This is just going to see where these need to be. So then where you made those marks with the acrylic paint, and you can use any color you want. I used red just so that it wouldn't show on the nail. I'm going to take my e-file. I'm going to file away the acrylic that is there, just so that there's not extra thickness to work with later. And then taking 2 pieces of that little bit thicker, heavier wire that I used before, and these can be very short, I'm going to take them and I'm going to attach them to the nail perpendicular to it so they go straight up in the air with some black acrylic. So I'm going to put a bead of black acrylic right in that hole that we just created with the e-file, and then I'm going to set that piece of wire in there and hold it until it sets enough that I can let go and it's not going to move, which, depending, it shouldn't take too long. That really was about all it took. And then I'm going to add a little more reinforcement around it with some more black acrylic, just so that that holds it in place, because you don't want any of these pieces to be delicate, because as you're moving it around and pulling on it and straining it, you don't want anything to fall apart on you. So once you have the first one in place, you can go ahead and repeat the process on the other side. And so just add a bead of black in the center of that hole, place your little post in there, and as you can see, you do have to hold it for a second or it's just gonna fall right off, but just hold it there until you should be able to feel when it's ready to be moved. And then add a little bit more reinforcing acrylic around it. So as you can see, the wire that we twisted that's through the straw is lower on the nail than those 2 posts that we put in. That is how you want it. You want it to look like that at the moment. So that is correct, because that piece that goes in the middle is going to slide up and down, and that's how the wings are going to be opening. That's the part. So those 2 posts are stationary and the middle is all that moves. So then string the wings onto those pieces of wire, so you can just slide them on there like that, and then you can test it to see if it works, and it should work. I wouldn't mess with it too much at this point. You know, why test it? As you continue to work, all that acrylic is going to set more and more, and it's going to get more strong and more sturdy. So just give it a test, make sure it works, but then let it be. So now I'm going to take some plastic wrap and I strung it over the top of those posts that we have. So there's going to be 3 holes in the plastic wrap now, 2 for each of the posts on the side, and then the one of the twisted wire in the middle, and trim them down so there isn't so much extra wire sticking up through the plastic wrap. You just want the very top of each piece of wire sticking through. And now I'm going to pretty much be hiding them with a bead of black acrylic and then a rhinestone that's black on top of it. So like I said, if you didn't want to hide it, you could just use clear acrylic, or you just want to add a little bit of something on top of it so that your wings can't come off. So you need to make sure that whatever you're using is larger than the hole in the wing. So like I said, just a little bit of black acrylic and a rhinestone is all I used. And the holes that are on the edges of the wings are, like I said, they're a little more snug. So you don't have to add too much size on top of the wire, because the hole, it's not going to come out if it's any bigger at all, really. So just enough that basically it's decorative. So I use the smallest rhinestones I own for that. And now I'm going to add a larger rhinestone in the center. So because that hole in the middle has a lot more space to it, it's a lot bigger, you have to make sure that the rhinestone you use is significantly larger as well. And I'm also going to reinforce it a little more. And another thing that's a benefit of having that twisted wire instead of just a single piece, especially for that in the middle, since you're going to use a rhinestone at the base for a handle, is that the twisted wire is going to hold the acrylic a lot stronger than a smooth piece would, because a smooth piece of wire, as you pull on it, you could very well just pull it right off. But if you have something twisted, then it's going to have something to hang on to. You don't have to worry about those side posts though, because you're not going to be pulling on them as you would the handle on the bottom. So now I'm just going to trim the plastic wrap until I get to one of those rhinestones and then tear it, and it should come right off. But make sure that you wait until the acrylic that's beneath the rhinestones is really, really set, or you're going to just disrupt this whole process, and all that work you just did will be for naught. So once it's on there, you just pull it off. That center rhinestone, because it is mobile, it might have a little more difficult time getting it off. So if you need to, you can hold the wings in place with a different finger as you're pulling off the plastic. Once again, give it a slight test, make sure that we're all movement. If you need to, you can sort of adjust them a little bit, make sure that everything is still working. And now I'm going to be taking and I'm going to be making that rhinestone handle on the bottom. So with the wings in an open position, because that way your wire is longer, first push them into a closed position, and because then there's more wire inside the nail, and trim it off so that there's a little bit of extra, and then pull it open like that. And then on the end of the wire, I'm going to be attaching a very large rhinestone. So this is another one that's on the bigger side to the end of it. And as you can see, that first bead, I didn't do it quite quick enough, so it wasn't set. So I'm just gonna have another one, make sure that it's nice and securely attached there, because you don't want your rhinestone to pop off as you're bragging about how cool this nail is you made to your friends, and then it's gone. So just make sure that that's nice and securely attached on there like that. And then once again, let that be for just a while so you don't break it. And now I'm going to take 2 pieces of this is upholstery wire, so it's a heavier, upholstery thread. So it's a little heavier thread, and I'm just going to cut them off about 1 inch long. And then I'm going to take a little more black acrylic at the top of the ladybug's head, and this is a very thin, small bead. I'm going to lay that down, and I'm going to grab a piece of thread, and I'm going to set that in on each side so that these are going to create the ladybug's antennas. And then I'm just going to set them and hold them into place for a second. And this acrylic is setting a little quicker than I'm used to because I just switched monomers, but get them in there, and then you can press that in with tweezers or a cuticle pusher or something, just so that it's really stuck in the acrylic. And then I'm going to add a little bit more acrylic over the top of them. Once again, a really wet bead, and as you can see, that one just wasn't quite secure enough. So I'm just going to reset that in there and make sure that it's really stuck this time. With really wet acrylic though, so that it's nice and thin. That's just gonna give you a better result, because you don't want any of this getting thick, because that could potentially later on interfere with how the wings operate. So then I'm just going to use the belly of my little brush there to keep that as flat as I can, because you really can't file it at this point. So you want to make sure that your acrylic has a nice smooth texture before, just as you're working with it. So then I'm going to take and just smooth it out just a little bit more, because like I said, I can't really file it, so I want to make sure that it's nice and smooth without needing to file it. And I also want to make sure that those thread pieces are nice and they're not going to pop out, because you don't want them to just leap out on you. So as that is nice and smooth like that, I'm now going to take and put a nail form backing, or you can also use a nail form if you want, behind the antennas, and then put a little bead of black on the tip of each one and attach yet another rhinestone. Just like that. So it's just a little bead of black acrylic, just so that that holds onto the rhinestone. And all of the rhinestones I'm using in this are black, but they're sort of an iridescent black, so they have a little more black rhinestones. Just plain ones seem like they just are kind of dull and not that interesting, but the ones that I'm using have an iridescency to them that really give them some life. So I'm going to put down a couple little drops of some nail glue, and I'm going to glue on some silver rhinestones at the base of each antenna. And so I don't have luck with nail glue, so you can see me monkeying around with it a little bit here, because I don't know. As I mentioned a little earlier in the video, I can glue myself to the nail. In fact, I think I did here briefly. I can glue myself to just about anything. For a while, after I did some troll designs, I had little furry fingertips because I glued some of their hair to my fingers, and it was about 24 hours that I had pink furry fingertips. But that is it. That is the whole design. And so I hope you like it. And please, as I mentioned, I will put a link to Tony's, the original Tony's design in the description box below, so check that out. And if you do a recreation, please take him and me if you'd like, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!